Grace and peace from Grace Church on the Hill in Toronto. In this Easter season, it's important we try and retain our sense of joy and faith in the risen Lord. It's difficult at this time when we want to lament and complain, we're sad, we're frustrated, we don't know when this lockdown will end. Who's running this show anyway? We don't like to be inconvenienced and frustrated and our lives put on hold. It's a very searching spiritual time. I'm discovering a lot about myself. Perhaps you are about yourself. We're not free just to do as we normally would. We are under constraint. But this is the time, the challenging time, when we are excavated in our faith. And one of the poets I look to help me just navigate through life is someone called George Herbert. The Reverend George Herbert, please. George Herbert is one of the great metaphysical poets of the English 17th century tradition. He was largely forgotten, but T.S. Eliot in the 20th century brought him back to life. George Herbert was Welsh born in 1593 in the reign of, just at the end of the reign of Elizabeth I. He didn't live a long life. He only lived to be 39 years of age. He was married for the last 3 years of his life, but he suffered ill health much of his life and died of pneumonia, I think it was. But he was brought up a privileged family. He went to Cambridge. He was elected the public orator of Cambridge University in the reign of King James I. He was a member of Parliament. The world was his oyster. And he had a conversion and threw it all away and became a priest of the Church of England. He was ordained in his 30s. His ministry was only 3 years. He had a little parish near Salisbury in Wiltshire named St. Andrew's Bemerton. No one's ever heard of it, and no one really ever heard of George Herbert after his death until his poetic legacy was resurrected. But here's a wonderful Easter poem that Herbert wrote. Herbert, by the way, was a friend of John Donne, the distinguished Dean poet of St. Paul's Cathedral, London. Donne was about 20 years older than Herbert, but they were friends and both poets. Here's a poem from Easter, and it's important in all the sadness and discouragement of this time that we remember that Easter has come and we live in the light of Easter, no matter the shadows we contend with at the moment. The thing I like about Herbert is God is not just an object out there. God is the subject. God is an old familiar friend who knows Herbert so well, the good points, the not so good points, just the way he is, and yet a faithful friend. So Herbert can be honest with God and jovial, really, because he trusts God utterly. He's a poet of love, really. So here's his poem for Easter. Rise, heart, thy Lord is risen, sing his praise without delays, who takes thee by the hand, that thou likewise with him mayest rise, that as his death calcined thee to dust, his life may make thee gold and much more just. Awake, my lute, and struggle for thy part with all thy art. The cross taught all would to resound his name who bore the same. He stretched the sinews taut all strings, what key is best to celebrate this most high day? Consort both heart and lute, and twist a song pleasant and long, or since all music is but 3 parts vied and multiplied, oh, let thy blessed Spirit bear a part and make up our defects with his sweet art. I got me flowers to straw thy way, I got me boughs off many a tree, but thou wast up by break of day and broughtest thy sweets along with thee. It's a wonderful poem of joy and music and trust in God. Rise, heart. That's at the heart of every Christian liturgies. Lift up our hearts. In this time of sadness and discouragement, when we're confined and alone and often solitary, let us remember the prayer of the Church this Easter season. Rise, heart. Lift up your hearts in thankfulness for the gift of our redemption, for the gift of God's grace that sustains us even in these times of confinement and imprisonment. George Herbert, a poet worth exploring. Grace and peace be with you.